Hello, friends, and welcome to another reading journal update. I am very excited about this one because we have 5 books that I need to journal about, and I have just been reading so much lately. So, there is also the third book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, which I didn't include in here, and that is in my last journal vlog. So, if you also want to see that, then you need to go back and watch that. These books I had a lot of fun reading. This first book here that I am currently journaling about is possibly my favourite read of 2024, minus maybe Akatar, Mist and Fury, because I feel like nothing can really beat that book. It's right up there, and that kind of what got me into the whole romantasy fantasy obsession that I'm currently in. So, apart from that book, this is definitely my favourite read of 2024. So, this is Metal Slinger by Rachel Schneider, and oh my god, I would recommend everybody to read this book because I just had the best time reading it. It is so fast paced but in a good way, and it's one of those books that had me feeling a little bit giddy when I was reading it, and it was just the most fun ever. So I basically got this book on my to be read because of a reading podcast that I listen to, and they kind of have the same similar taste as me, and they recommended it and said that it was also their favourite book of the year, so I felt like I should definitely give it a go. Now, it's kind of set on the ocean. It's more of a sea-based fantasy, but not like they're always on the sea. There's just a part of it where they start off on the sea and then they go to land because everyone's magic is kind of tied to the land. So we have our female main character, Bryn, who has basically been sent to this place called Allaha. I don't know if that's pronounced correctly, but they basically live life over the sea, so obviously they don't really have much magic or are even aware of it. And then we have the Kenta people who do live on land, and they also hold an annual market. So basically, the start of the book is Bryn going to this market. She has always wanted to visit, so we go there, and then obviously stuff happens. I feel like I can't really say what actually happens there, but all you need to know is that the main male character, Akka, he is just so good, and their romance is incredible. But then there's just so many plot twists, and the ending literally had me gasping, and I didn't know what to do. So I can't really say anything because there's just so many plot twists in this book. I don't want to give anything away, but it is just such a good story, and you should 1000% read it. It's so fun. The fan family, the banter, the tension, the everything is just so good, and I am so excited to read book 2, which Rachel Schneider says that it's not coming out until late 2025, I think, but she is currently working on it, which is very exciting because I'm just obsessed. And yet the ending, no words. If anyone wants to talk to me about the ending, please message me on Instagram because I haven't really been able to chat with many people about this story. So yeah, I'm just looking for somebody to discuss the ending with me because I just don't know how to feel about it. But yeah, it is still my best read of 2024, and I would recommend it to everyone, especially if you enjoyed reading Quicksilver. It's kind of the same similar vibe, but I would say that I enjoyed Metal Slinger a lot more than Quicksilver. I just was a lot more connected to the characters, and the side characters as well in the story are just so funny, so I absolutely loved reading about them and seeing all of their relationships. And I'm also pretty impressed with how I managed to get the book cover to match the actual book, so you'll have to let me know if you think I did a good job with that. So now that I'm moving on to the next book, which is the start of a series by Stasia Stark. I have no idea if I am pronouncing that one correctly, but we have another fantasy series, of course, and I would say that this one is just a classic fae story. It's got everything that you would kind of expect it to have. It's called A Court This Cruel and Lovely, and I just had a lot of fun reading this one. I was really wanting just like a classic fantasy with all the tropes, and this definitely had it. So if you don't want a story that has, I don't know, everything that you would expect from a fantasy story, I didn't find it cheesy or anything like that. I really enjoyed the story. I was intrigued by the plot, the characters, and I, again, just had so much fun reading this one. But if you are someone that kind of like rolls their eyes at all the classic fantasy tropes, then maybe this isn't one for you. But yeah, this one follows Priska, who is trying to escape from her kingdom because she is a hybrid. You have to like hide your powers because they get sent off to somebody when you're born, and then you get partially them returned to you when you reach a certain age. That's kind of part of another subplot as well. And yeah, she's trying to escape, and then of course she bumps into, in the forest, a group of mercenaries, and then that is when we meet our main character, Lorien. We obviously watch as they go from enemies to lovers, and yeah, there's a lot of tension between the two of them, and they're definitely enemies for the majority of the first book. So you're kind of just following the plot and trying to understand the world. But I really enjoyed this book, and it definitely made me want to carry on the series and read the second one because I was very like invested in the characters, and I wanted to see how Priska and Lorien's relationship was going to continue throughout the series, because obviously I had mostly witnessed them being enemies for the majority of it, with some lots of scenes with a lot of tension, of course, and we got to know the other mercenaries in Lorien's little group. So this first spread I went with kind of like a dark rose theme, and I put the little hourglass in the bottom corner because that is what is on the front cover of this book. So I was trying to match these books to the front covers, and then for the next one I decided to kind of squeeze two of the books together into one spread, because I realized that otherwise I was going to be doing so many of these spreads that were going to look very similar. So I decided to incorporate two into one, which was definitely a good choice in the end. So the second book is called A Kingdom This Cursed and Empty. Oh, Ralph appeared. Surprise, surprise. And I would say, oh yeah, and he also left me a dirty paw print on my journal because he had just been outside and he like goes and plays in the fields and gets all muddy and then comes back and covers my desk in dirty footprints. But anyway, back to the book. This was maybe my favourite one in the entire series because we had a lot of fun experiencing like Priska and Lorien's romance, because they kind of move away from each other in the first book. At the end they like get parted, but then later on in the book too they kind of get pushed back together in a scenario. So I really enjoyed that, them just being in like close proximity and kind of scheming. So basically Priska goes to save her best friend from kind of like the big villain, and she goes undercover into his castle. So there was a lot of scheming and planning and sneaking around, and that is probably what I enjoyed the most about this book. And then Lorien kind of appears later on in the story for other reasons, and yeah, they both end up being in the castle together, going undercover and working together to try and free her best friend as well as some other people. And then we ended up meeting some more surprise characters. I won't spoil it, but yeah, so this was my favourite book of all of them because I just really enjoyed the plot and I really enjoyed seeing how their relationship was growing. As you can see, I used some stamp papers for the titles. I decided to put them on some sticker paper scraps and then just cut them out and stuck them on the spread. On the right hand side, I ended up sticking this girl sticker with a crown because the third book is called A Crown This Cold and Heavy, and there is a crown on the front cover. So again, I was trying to kind of match things to the front covers. After I'd finished reading the second book of this series, I actually took a break to read another book, which you will see me make later on in the video, so I'll talk about that book later on. I would say that probably book 3 was maybe the one that I enjoyed the least. There was just some slow parts in the plot, but I did still really enjoy the story, and it made me want to carry on the series and read book 4. It's just, I think because I enjoyed book 2 so much and where they were and what they were doing, it just felt a little bit different in book 3. But I really like how this spread came out. I like how there's kind of like a lot of decoration in the middle, and again it reflects the book covers quite well. So yeah, I'm really happy with how this one turned out. Even though, again, it is quite similar to the first one, but I wanted it to be kind of cohesive, but also slightly different. So the next spread is going to be the last book in this series, but I wanted to try and do something different so that it wasn't a spread that was exactly like the other two. So I had these massive stickers from, I think, AliExpress, and I think I bought these maybe like 3 years ago when I first started pen paling. So I've had them for a very long time, and when I bought them I didn't actually expect them to be that big. I think the idea was that I was going to use them for pen pal letters, but then obviously they came and they were huge. So they've kind of just been one of those stickers that have been hidden in a drawer in my craft room for a very long time, and I haven't really used them. So I felt like this was the perfect opportunity to do so. So for this spread, I decided to go for a composition where I was kind of covering the left hand side as all the decoration, and then I was going to be doing the right hand side for the writing and the title. So I just started by covering it with different paper scraps and different bits of ephemera that I had. And I also forgot to mention as well, book 3, even though I said it was the one I enjoyed the least, the ending is insane. It's a huge cliffhanger. So I literally cried at the end of book 3. I forgot to say that. When I say I cry, I didn't mean, I'm in floods of tears. I mean there is like a tear rolling down my face. So for me, if I cry at a book, that's probably about as much as you're gonna get from me. But yeah, that happened at the end of book 3. Obviously I won't say what happened. So then yeah, I was eager to read book 4. Book 4 is kind of the big war, if you like. There's a lot of action. All the different side characters are all scheming together to go against the big villain. So there's a lot of politics involved, but also a lot of action and fighting and battling. And we get some different character POVs as well. So we also get to experience another slow burn romance with 2 of the other characters building. So that was kind of nice to have that, because obviously Priska and Lorien are kind of like happily ever after at this point. They're like madly in love. So it was nice to experience the start of a relationship from those different characters. I went ahead and added these rose stamps just as a little bit more detail. And yeah, I really like how this one turned out. I think these rose stickers are kind of the perfect size for this journal. So I was very happy to finally use them as well. I'm going to be trying to use a lot of my stationery in 2025 that I already have, and I'm going to try and not buy much stationery at all. There are some big changes coming in 2025 in regards to just my general life, which I can't really announce at the moment, but I will be letting you know in the future when I know a little bit more about it. So yeah, that is kind of why I am trying to not spend lots of money and try and use all the things that I already have. So for the last spread, and this is the book that I read in between the other 2 books that I was reading, and the reason why I read this book, which is Bride, by the way, I should probably mention that, by Ali Hazelwood. I had seen people read this book before, but I wasn't really interested in it because werewolves and vampires, I'm not that fussed about that side of the fantasy world. I have read things with them in it before, but I think it kind of put me off a little bit because it's not usually what I like. And I know that Ali Hazelwood obviously isn't really a fantasy writer. She's more of a contemporary romance writer, I think. But there is a podcast that I absolutely adore, and I will link the book podcast below that I'm talking about. They don't have like a big following. I feel like they should have a way bigger following because I think that they are absolutely hilarious. And they were doing a podcast on Bride, so I wanted to be able to read it before I listened to the podcast because obviously it will have spoilers in it. So I also knew that it wasn't like a huge book, so I was like, I can just squeeze this in between the series and then I'll be able to listen to the podcast. And I'm so glad that I did because I honestly was in stitches listening to this podcast about this book. If you read the story, then obviously you might know what some of the interesting scenes were that they were talking about on the podcast. But yeah, this book wasn't one of my favourites. It was a kind of a fun read, but like, I don't know, it was a little bit cringe at times, and some of their like plot points just didn't make any sense. Like, everything was kind of too obvious. Well, not obvious, but like too easy, if you like, at some points. And the romance between the werewolf and the vampire. So basically the vampire has to go and marry like the alpha of the werewolves to try and create an alliance and just make everything work better. So we kind of see how they obviously, I guess, enemies to lovers because they don't really like each other. It's kind of an arranged marriage, but then in the end they end up obviously being happy with each other. But yeah, it was just so funny at times. Like, I was literally like laughing at the writing, like not necessarily the writing, but I think just some of the scenes in the plot because of the werewolf and vampire situation. So the last scene in the book, yeah, that was kind of like the weirdest scene for me. I was like, what is going on? What am I reading? But yeah, I did enjoy the book and I'm glad I read it. But I definitely maybe wouldn't read a vampire and werewolf romance again. But back to the spread, I was really happy with how this one came out. I used my Scrabble letters again, and I also used this sticker that I had from Maragona Suli Art, which I had used previously in my 2024 bullet journal setup, but I wanted to use it because obviously it had a wolf on it, and I had this lace pet tape as well from Journal Say, and I have used loads of things from Journal Say actually in this video that I forgot to mention, so I will put my affiliate link down below for you to use, and I'll link the items that I have used, like the rose stickers and things like that. But yeah, these are my finished spreads. I'm really happy with how they all came out, and it was nice to finally get some spreads done in my journal because, as I said, I'm very behind. I'm now reading the Caraval series, so those are the next spreads that I shall be making. I have no idea what to do for those spreads, so if anyone has any ideas, please let me know in the comments. I would also love to know which spread is your favourite if you've read any of these books, but obviously don't spoil things for other people in the comments. But I'm happy to talk about books with anybody here or on Instagram, so all you need to do is message me. And yeah, please read Metal Slinger and then talk to me about it after because so good. But thank you so much for watching. If you have enjoyed and you've watched to the end, then you should definitely consider subscribing. And yeah, here's 2 more reading journal updates in the new year, so hopefully I'll see you there.